Welcome, everyone, for this Focus Me audio overview. Today, we are taking a deep dive into an idea that, well, it radically redefines how we interact with the world.
It really does.
The idea is that reading people isn't some, mysterious gift that a few lucky people have.
I don't know.
It is, according to the sources we've looked at today, a completely learnable, systematic skill. We're moving beyond just subjective intuition and into data-driven analysis.
That's exactly right. And our mission here really is to give you a shortcut into the applied psychology of Patrick King's methodology.
Okay.
What this does is it kind of pulls together all these established psychological models. You'll hear names like Freud, Jung, Maslow, and it boils them down into actionable skills. Skills for analyzing, understanding, and this is the key part, predicting behavior.
Before we jump into dissecting motivations and all that, the sources are really insistent that if you want to be accurate, you need some ground rules.
Oh, definitely.
So what are the three non-negotiable prerequisites for moving this beyond just guesswork?
Okay, the first one is contextual analysis. Behavior never, ever exists in a vacuum.
Right.
Any conclusion you draw is basically meaningless unless you interpret that action relative to the specific situation, the environment, and, of course, the culture they're in.
Can you give us an example of that, like how that would play out?
Sure. Think about eye contact. If you see someone avoiding eye contact, you might immediately think, oh, they're being deceitful, or maybe they're stressed.
Yeah, that's a common assumption.
But if that person comes from a culture where direct eye contact is seen as, highly aggressive or disrespectful, well, your entire assessment is just immediately invalid.
So you have to constantly be adjusting your lens
Right.
based on geography, culture, even just the room you're in. What's the second foundation?
The second is the absolute necessity of establishing baseline behavior.
Ah.
This is where most people who think they're good at reading people, this is where they fail.
Why is that so important?
Because reliable predictive insights don't come from watching one single action. They come exclusively from observing deviations from what's normal for that person.
That makes so much sense. So if I meet someone and they're, I don't know, tapping their pen nervously, I can't just conclude they're lying.
Exactly.
But if I see them over several meetings and they're usually calm and then they start tapping the pen, that change, that deviation, that's the real signal.
Precisely. The baseline is your true north.
Oh.
And the third, and maybe the hardest one, is grappling with the problem of objectivity.
Our own biases, you mean?
Exactly. If you can't recognize and actively fight your own personal biases, especially something like confirmation bias, where you only see what you already believe,
Then you're just seeing a reflection of yourself.
you're just seeing yourself. Your analysis will always be a reflection of you, not them. So self-awareness is really the first essential step to reading anyone else accurately.
Okay, so with that rigorous structure in place, let's drill down into the engine room. What's actually driving these deviations we're supposed to be looking for? Let's unpack the why behind every action.
Right.
Starting with, I guess, the most fundamental force, the pleasure principle.
Yeah, the sources make it crystal clear that the mind is primarily motivated by two things: seeking pleasure and actively avoiding pain. That's the universal engine of behavior.
But there's a twist there, right?
There is. And it's a critical insight for behavioral asymmetry.
Hmm.
People will often work much, much harder to avoid pain than to gain pleasure.
Wow, that's highly actionable. So if you're trying to motivate someone or negotiate with them, it's not just about the benefits they gain.
No, you should probably focus your message more on the risks or the losses they avoid by going your way. Loss aversion is an incredibly powerful motivator.
And when we're on this path, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, the sources say something interesting. Emotion tends to trump logic.
It almost always does. When that pleasure principle gets activated, our feelings just.
Yeah.
They tend to override any rational, measured thought.
Okay, so stepping up from that, we get to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is more of a structured way to understand motivations, and it works kind of like a ladder, right?
Exactly like a ladder. You have to satisfy the needs on the lower rungs before you can even think about striving for the higher ones.
So break that down for us. What's at the bottom?
At the very base, you have your basic physiological needs: food, water, shelter. Can't think about anything else if you don't have those.
Makes sense.
Once those are stable, your motivation shifts entirely to safety needs. We're talking financial security, a stable job, physical safety.
And once a person feels safe and stable, their primary driver changes yet again.
It moves up to love and belonging. This is that deep need for friendship, for community, intimate connections. After that, a person who feels secure and connected will then focus on self-esteem needs.
Which is the desire for confidence,
Uh,
respect.
Confidence, respect from others, achievement, recognition. And only after all of those levels are pretty much met do we reach the very top, self-actualization.
Which is the desire to realize your fullest potential.
The desire to become everything you are capable of becoming.
The power here seems to be that you don't have to guess what's driving someone. If you can identify their most pressing, unmet need, that's the strongest predictor of their immediate behavior.
Absolutely. So for instance, if you see someone who is just overly sensitive to criticism in meetings, it's highly probable their self-esteem needs are currently unmet. It doesn't matter how successful they are on paper, that's their current driver.
And if we dig even deeper into the subconscious, we run into Jung and Freud.
Right. And Jung's concept of the shadow is particularly revealing here.
The shadow. That sounds ominous.
It's basically the hidden part of ourselves, the collection of all our repressed, unwanted traits like pettiness, rage, vanity that we actively hide, sometimes even from ourselves.
But that stuff doesn't just go away.
No, it leaks out. It unconsciously drives our current behavior. So if you refuse to acknowledge your own tendency toward jealousy, for example, that jealousy will manifest, maybe as passive-aggressive behavior or constant criticism of other people.
Which connects directly to the idea of the defense of the ego, right?
Exactly. This is the idea that people are highly motivated to protect their self-esteem from what feel like, well, devastating blows. They'll bend reality to do it.
Bending reality is a powerful phrase. Can you give us a quick, common example of a defense mechanism?
A really common one is rationalization. A student fails an exam. Instead of admitting they didn't study enough, they tell everyone and themselves that the teacher hates them or the questions were unfair.
So they're protecting their pride, their ego.
They're protecting their ego by bending reality. And if you can figure out which defense mechanism someone uses over and over, you get a real window into their core insecurities.
So now we're moving from why people act to how they act consistently.
That's the idea. Motivations explain immediate situational behavior. But personality frameworks, they help us predict those reliable long-term patterns.
And the model that's considered the most scientifically robust by our sources is the Big Five. It's often remembered by the acronym OCEAN.
Yeah, OCEAN. It gives you a pretty measurable map of someone's psychological landscape. Let's break it down. O is for openness.
Curiosity, imagination.
Exactly. Willingness to take risks, try new things. People high in openness are often adaptable, which links to dynamic leadership.
Okay, then C is for conscientiousness. And this one seems to be a huge predictor of real-world success. It's about being cautious, careful, reliable.
It is hugely predictive. High conscientiousness isn't just linked to professional success. It's also tied to superior impulse control, which often means healthier, longer lives. It's a measure of self-regulation, really.
Then you have the social traits, extroversion, whether someone gets their energy from being around people, and agreeableness, which is about being kind, cooperative.
Right. And the final one, N, is for neuroticism. This is really a measure of emotional stability, or the lack thereof. High neuroticism means a tendency toward worry, anxiety, a more negative outlook.
So OCEAN gives us the scientific framework, but the sources also mention other typologies, like Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram. Why bring those in if OCEAN is the most robust?
Because they offer a different kind of utility. OCEAN is great for prediction. But MBTI, which is based on Jung's work, is more about how people prefer to process information.
Thinking versus feeling, for example.
Its real strength is in helping you improve your communication. You can tailor your message to how the other person actually prefers to hear and digest information. It builds empathy.
And the Enneagram, that one sounds like it goes even deeper.
It does. The Enneagram isn't really about what you do. It's about why you're afraid to stop doing it. It categorizes people based on their core unconscious fears and desires. Well, for example, the investigator, a type 5, is motivated by a deep fear of being incompetent, so they just strive relentlessly to be knowledgeable. The achiever, type 3, wants to be valued, so they're always seeking praise and success. It gets at those hidden drivers.
So the real skill is combining these maps. You use OCEAN for prediction, and then MBTI and the Enneagram to understand communication styles and core fears.
That's how you get a full picture.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Moving from all that invisible internal structure to the observable physical data. The sources say over 55% of communication is nonverbal. So how do we read the body for the truth?
We have to become expert observers of the involuntary, The key is distinguishing between macro expressions, which are slow, last a few seconds, and are easily faked, like a polite smile,
Right.
and the all-important micro expressions, which were identified by Paul Ekman.
Give us a visual on that. What makes a micro-expression so different?
A micro expression is it's an involuntary flash of genuine emotion. Anger, fear, surprise, contempt. It lasts less than half a second.
So you can't fake them.
You can't fake them, and they reliably betray true feelings. It might be a tiny, sudden tightening of the lips or a quick flash of a sneer around the mouth, but it vanishes before the person even knows it happened. They are pure, unfiltered data.
And what about the rest of the body? The posture?
The general rule for body talk is expansion versus contraction. A relaxed, confident body expands. Shoulders back, open posture. An anxious or stressed body contracts. It makes itself smaller.
And that's when you see those pacifying behaviors, like rubbing the neck or touching the face.
Exactly. Those are self-soothing behaviors. They're trying to calm themselves down because of stress.
The sources really hammer this point home. Never analyze a single gesture in isolation. Why is looking at clusters of behaviors so critical?
Because context is everything. And any single gesture can be misinterpreted. Someone crossing their arms might just be cold.
Right?
But if they're verbally saying they're happy while their arms are tightly crossed, their feet are pointed toward the exit, and their voice pitch is rising, now you have a cluster of incongruence.
So incongruence, when the nonverbal cues contradict the verbal message, that's the real red flag. That's the signal of cognitive stress.
Absolutely. The system is under stress. And we can actively look for this stuff using concepts like thin slicing.
Which is making quick, accurate judgments based on small bits of data.
Yeah, that first impression, the firmness of a handshake. It's leveraging our trained intuition. And then there's the Sherlock Holmes method.
Reading personal spaces and possessions, how does that translate to prediction?
You view someone's personal space, their office, their clothes, their social media, as an extension of their identity. You look for what's there in excess or what's conspicuously absent.
So if their office is perfectly organized with color-coded labels?
That's strong evidence for high conscientiousness. But conversely, if a professional's office is completely sterile, no personal photos, no art, nothing, that absence might tell you more about their pure focus on achievement than any direct question ever could.
That makes the environment an active source of data. And finally, the sources talk about strategic inquiry, using indirect questions to bypass our defenses.
Yeah, because direct questions about values often get you a socially acceptable canned answer. Ask someone, are you ambitious? And most people will say yes.
So what's a better question?
Ask something like, if a fire broke out in your home and you could only save 3 non-living items, what would they be?
And what does that reveal?
It forces them to rank their priorities on this family, keepsakes, work tools, financial records. It reveals their core values much better than a direct question. Another great one is asking, what kind of prize would you work hardest for? It puts their value system into very concrete terms.
So, to pull this all together,
To synthesize the whole methodology, mastering this requires the holistic integration of all these pieces. Understanding motivation, mapping personality, decoding nonverbal clusters, and making precise observations. The utility it's profound. It goes way beyond curiosity. You get better predictive accuracy, you improve negotiations, you can resolve conflicts because you actually understand the other person's internal world.
and one of the most powerful benefits seems to be that this kind of rigorous analysis of others forces some pretty profound self-reflection.
It becomes an invitation to look honestly inside ourselves, to recognize our own shadow, our own biases.
Which leads to more compassion.
Ultimately, yes. The goal of this deep dive is not to catch someone in a lie. It's to see holes in a world that is often split, broken, divided, and unconscious. Think about shadow projection. That's when we attribute our own unwanted traits to other people.
So when something in someone else really bothers us,
It might be something we don't like about ourselves. Recognizing that can dramatically shift your perspective on conflict and criticism.
so what does this all mean for you? Pay attention to what behavior in others consistently triggers anger or intense criticism or even shame in you. It might just be revealing your own unacknowledged shadow.
A powerful thought to end on.
We hope this deep dive gave you profound insights quickly. Thanks everyone for joining this Focus Me audio overview, and please be sure to subscribe to Focus Me for more learning.